Hey everybody, Arnaldo here broadcasting from Fidelio's Frequency. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video of new releases. A few weeks ago, I published already one in which I was showcasing and talking about 10 records that I had been spinning over the course of, let's say, the first quarter of 2024. I had a few more and I held them off for another video because I felt that would have been way too long. And today we'll be talking about another 7 new releases that I have currently been spinning. So let's start off with probably what is the most high profile release of the batch of records that I'm going to talk to you about. And I'm talking about the new album by Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. This is her 3rd album. I think this is her strongest album, her best album to date. It combines the better parts of her 2nd album, which I wasn't too much of a fan of. It's a good album, but I felt a little disappointed compared to the 1st album, which I loved and I thought was groundbreaking, lyrically brilliant, very innovative musically in terms of sounds. So I kind of hesitated when this was announced to pre-order it. And on the day of release, I streamed it quite a few times and I realized how good it is. And here I am with physical copy, which probably I think I bought over the course of that weekend, of release weekend. This is probably the album that I have listened to the most this year. And it's only been out for less than a month. I probably listened to it, whether on record or streaming it, about 20, 25 times, maybe exaggerating 25, but probably 20 times. And again, I think it has her strongest songs to date, actually probably her best songs to date. I think her best song is Birds of a Feather. That's one of the songs on here. And actually there are 3 songs in a row, which I find just like perfect. Like the sequencing is absolutely perfect. Birds of a Feather, Wildflower, and The Greatest. The Greatest actually is very surprising because I think Billie Eilish's singing style is a blend of whispered, spoken, and modulating her voice very softly across the melodies. Then on The Greatest, actually, there are a few moments where she actually belts it out. And recently this week, I think she performed on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and she sings The Greatest. And it was a spectacular performance. It was perfect. Her vocal performance was perfect. The band sounded fantastic. Of course, her brother, who composes and produces most of the music, was there. And I highly recommend you look up that clip of The Greatest on The Late Show. But the album alternates with more like quieter, almost confessional type of moments to your usual pop, maybe influenced a little bit by hip hop beats and like groovy bass lines. So I highly recommend it, but buyer beware, because I bought this. This is the copy that I got at Target, which comes in a gatefold. I think everything here is recycled, starting from the paper to the vinyl. Gatefold, like I said, includes an exclusive poster, and I believe it is on what they call like it's orange yellow vinyl, and it's a bio vinyl, which is a new formulation of vinyl that is supposed to be better for the environment, I guess. And it contains pieces that are recycled vinyl, basically, which is actually nothing new because a lot of plants have been recycling some of their vinyl, like the scraps and the cutout parts from around the records. Sometimes they get thrown in with the regrind and reused with virgin vinyl. But the main flaw of this record, I think, is how it was mastered. I think it was, since it's not a very long album, it's only about, I think, 48 minutes. And one of the sides, I think, is up 25 minutes, the first side. And I think because of that, the cutting engineer mastered it, or the mastering engineer mastered it at a very low volume, which coupled with the bio vinyl, which is not really the quietest vinyl formulation. I had to clean it 3 times and it got better progressively as every time that I cleaned it. And the lower volume combined with a noise floor that is a little louder than you would expect from black vinyl. But also, I heard the black vinyl is really not that much better reading the reviews on Discogs. Billie Eilish hit me hard and soft. Switching gears totally, and in terms of artist, in terms of sound, in terms of mood of music, let's move on and talk about Beth Gibbons. Her album, first proper solo album by Beth Gibbons, called Lives Outgrown. Beth Gibbons, for those of you who don't know, she is the lead singer of Portishead. I say she is the lead singer of Portishead because officially Portishead has never disbanded. They just take quite a long time in between albums, and we haven't heard from Portishead in probably, I want to say 2006, so do the math. Is it 18 years? No, 2007 or 2008. I forget. That's how long it's been. So I figured that maybe Beth Gibbons got tired of waiting around and had so much creativity and so many songs that were piled up, and she wanted an outlet for herself. And actually this album is 10 years in the making. I say this is her first proper solo album because she already had a side project from Portishead, I think in 2002. She was part of Rustin Man. She provided vocals for the project, the band, by Paul Webb, the Talk Talk, former bassist of the band Talk Talk. And funny enough, on this album, she collaborates with another surviving member of the former member of Talk Talk, and this time it's the drummer, Lee Harris, who co-writes a few songs, but plays percussions on the entire album. Like I said, 10 years in the making, produced by James Ford. James Ford this year so far has produced one of my favorite albums, which is the Pet Shop Boys album. I talked about that in my first new release video. Last year he produced the album by Blur, The Ballad of Darren, as well as the most recent album, which came out last year, by Depeche Mode. So you kind of probably get the atmosphere. It is a somber type of production, I want to say. At least all of the moods that he inspires are very melancholic, somber, and in this case, I want to say sometimes a little dark, a little spooky, maybe. Those are the atmospheres. For me, it's definitely not a summer album. I have listened to it quite a bit already, but I'll probably be listening to it once the fall and the winter come around, because I think that is the right mood to listen to this album. Songs that deal with loss, grief. Beth Gibbons is at the stage of her life where actually she feels comfortable talking about and singing about menopause. To give you an idea of the type of sound, I want to say it reminded me of PJ Harvey's album from last year, I in the Old Year Dying. Vibraphone, dulcimer, strings and string arrangements on the entire album. Percussion, not really drums. I would like to call them more percussions and sometimes unconventional types of percussion. And of course, the beautiful voice of Beth Gibbons, voice that I always, and this is not really, I'm not saying this to lessen her vocal performance, but I always equate it to misery, despair, desolation, but so emotional in her delivery, as well as when someone listens to her. At least that's how it affects me personally. Some of the songs on here, I don't know, there's so many great songs. Rewind, let's call it the single or the video, Lost Changes, Reaching Out. Let me talk to you a little bit about the pressing. This also is a very quiet record, and like the Billie Eilish one, that actually, as opposed to the Billie Eilish one that I just talked about, this album is mastered beautifully. It's recorded impeccably. The soundstage, sometimes it feels like the band is actually in your room playing, but the vinyl pressing is absolutely stellar. Black, silent, no floor noise. This is the perfect pressing. And in addition to that, the presentation is actually spectacular. It comes in a gatefold, And it's a tip-on jacket. It's like the very heavy cardstock. Also, at least the version that I got, I think it's the indie exclusive, comes with a beautiful print, a 12 by 12 print, then a fold out, which includes the lyrics and the credits, which is also 12 by 12, and also a really nice booklet. I think it's 12 pages of additional pictures of Beth Gibbons and scenery. So I highly recommend this pressing, the presentation, the music, the quality of the pressing. Beth Gibbons, Lives Outgrown. This, along with the Billie Eilish I spoke about before, almost for sure in my year-end top list. And now the third and last female artist of this batch that I'm talking about, and that is Jessica Pratt. Her new album called Here in the Pitch. This is her fourth album. And Jessica Pratt, some people have classified her more of a folk artist. I don't hear so much of the folk. I hear a lot of the maybe 60s psychedelic kind of folk, maybe, but not folk in your traditional sense. And on this album, she achieves the sound that she's always been searching for, and the way she defines it, and I think it's actually perfect. It's dreamy and cloudy sound, ethereal at times. It reminds me a little bit in terms of atmosphere, like a ghostly atmosphere that you would find on a Scott Walker record. And I say ghostly because her voice is drenched in reverb. She sings beautifully, but is so amplified with the reverb that it kind of creates that ghostly, haunting kind of feel and mood. Sometimes she also reminds me, in terms of melody, in terms of delivery, of Dusty Springfield from the 60s. And some of the songs that I prefer on here, Life Is, which has beautiful string arrangements, which you don't really hear as predominantly on the other tracks, except for on Life Is, World on a String, Glances, and the final track, The Last Year. Beautiful album. I was quite surprised. I did not know of Jessica Pratt until now, and I'm happy I finally discovered her. Let me talk to you a little bit about the pressing. This one as well on black vinyl, and an insert 12 by 12 that has credits, lyrics, as well as a nice picture on the other side. So Jessica Pratt, Here in the Pitch. And now let's talk about a band that has been making music since the 80s, so it's almost 40 years. 1986 saw the debut breakthrough album by the band Crowded House, and one of the greatest pop songs ever written, Don't Dream It's Over. I'm talking about the band Crowded House and their newest album called Gravity Stairs. Although they've been around for so long, they broke up, went on hiatus a few times, and this is only their 8th album. And of the original 3 members, we have 2 surviving members, which are Neil Finn, main songwriter and guitar player of the band, and bassist Nick Seymour. In this lineup, they are joined by 2 of Neil Finn's sons, Elroy on drums, and on guitar, Liam Finn. To complete the lineup is longtime producer. He produced actually some of the earlier albums by Crowded House. I'm talking about Mitchell Froom on keyboards. I love Mitchell Froom as a producer, fantastic musician. And you hear the influences on this album, first of all, because all of Mitchell Froom's albums have a unique sound. They are beautifully recorded. And this album sounds amazing in terms of recording, in terms of mastering. Was mastered by Bob Ludwig. And like I said, some of the influences, I think, transpire through Mitchell Froom. He's produced Paul McCartney, Elvis Costello. I hear a little bit of that. The songcraft of Neil Finn is accentuated by production and the musicianship of the band. In addition to Neil Finn, there are some co-writes with his sons. And there is a welcome return. One of the other songs that I love on this album is co-written with Tim Finn, Neil's brother, who briefly joined the band, and especially for their, what I consider probably their masterpiece, which is Woodface. They co-write all the songs on that album, and he co-writes a very personal song called Some Greater Plan for Claire. And I recently saw Crowded House, and he explained, Neil Finn explained the background to that song, and it's actually both Neil and Tim Finn recovered or were flipping through I think their grandfather's World War II diaries, so they were inspired to write that song. Beautiful song. But a classic on this album, and I have to say it's really up there with Don't Dream It's Over, is Life's Imitation, my favorite track on the album, which on the album, and here is the interesting thing, is as you can see here, second song on the album is Life's Imitation, but it's actually called Teenage Summer. Now, if you stream it, you'll see that it's listed as Teenage Summer, but what happened was that the album went into production with the original title Life's Imitation, and in the meanwhile, I believe Neil Finn played the album for his grandson, one of his grandchildren, I think. And when he asked which are the songs that he liked the most, he actually said Teenage Summer, which is in the chorus. It's repeated quite often in the chorus of that song, and Neil Finn decided to change the name of it from Life's Imitation to Teenage Summer. So if you buy this album on vinyl, you don't see Teenage Summer, don't be misled, because it's actually called Life's Imitation. So opening track, also beautiful one, which is Magic Piano. It's a bit dreamy. And closing track almost reminds me a little bit of Steely Dan in the sense that it's jazzy, but like a jazz rock that is reminiscent, at least to me, of something Steely Dan would have done back in the 70s. And this is the gatefold edition. I think they're all gatefold. And it is on this light blue cloud vinyl. No issues with the pressings. Sounds fantastic, also because it was recorded and mastered really well. Crowded House, Gravity Stairs. And now I'd like to talk about an artist that I don't think gets talked about enough nowadays. He's been making music since the 90s. Extremely talented musician, gifted, very gifted songwriter. He's got style up the wazoo, and if there is one artist that today epitomizes the word rock star, that's Lenny Kravitz. Blue Electric Light is his 12th album, and what a fine album it is. I think his last album, Raised Vibration, came out 6 years ago. Then the pandemic hit, and from what I understand, Lenny Kravitz retreated to the Bahamas, where he has his studio, and started writing and recording. I think he wrote during that time and leading up to this album about 60 songs. 12 are included here. We may have another Lenny Kravitz album pretty soon because he's got a stockpile of songs ready to go, written. He plays almost everything, composed, produced, with the help, recorded and engineered by Craig Ross. He's featured on pretty much every Lenny Kravitz album, longtime collaborator of Lenny Kravitz. And some of the songs that I just like, I could name them all, but I'll just point to a couple of them. First single off the album was TK421. Does that remind anyone of anything? Yes, some people may think the Star Wars reference, the name of the stormtrooper supposedly that was guarding the Millennium Falcon when it was imprisoned in the Death Star, but I think it's a reference to something else.
I mean, it's one thing to hear it from Buck's mouth. It's another thing to hear it from the TK421.
So if you want your stereo adjusted by Lenny Kravitz, get the TK421 adjustment. Other fine songs on here is It's Just Another Fine Day in This Universe of Love. That's the opening track. Lenny Kravitz has always had this message of love, of peace. They're always very positive, and he's always very true to himself. Human, another stellar track. One of the ballads, probably one of the best ballads he's written, is one of my favorite on this record. It's called Spirit in My Heart. I think his gift is to capture the inspirations or the artists that have inspired him. The Beatles, John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Wonder, and mix them all together, but make them his own. And it's just the Lenny Kravitz sound in the end. And it does sound fantastic, by the way. This pressing sounds amazing, mastered by Bernie Grundman. The gatefold is beautiful. As you can see, it has this foil silver finish on some of the accents of Lenny, of his outfit, as well as a debossed title here. And it also comes with a beautiful booklet of lyrics, credits, and fantastic pictures. I think it's 18 pages or 16 pages. So please give Lenny Kravitz a spin, stream him. I know some people just pass him by thinking that they already know what he sounds like. He always has something else to add, and I think this is a strong, actually very solid album. I like it more than Raised Vibration, which is the predecessor to this one. Blue Electric Light, Lenny Kravitz. The next record I'm going to talk about is of a project that I had no idea of. I was totally in the dark. I actually had to do some research about it, and hadn't it been for the involvement of the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, Suede, and I'm talking about Brett Anderson, the lead singer, sings on pretty much the entire album. The name of the album is Death Songbook, and the project, I don't want to call it a band, it's really an orchestra. The project is Para Orchestra. That is the name of the orchestra. And a little bit of background on the Para Orchestra. I actually did some research and found out that Charles Hazelwood, the British conductor, was inspired by his daughter, who has cerebral palsy, Eliza, who also actually sang beautifully, to put together an ensemble of musicians, of disabled musicians, and to use it as a platform to showcase their virtuosic abilities as musicians. So back in 2011, he started assembling and putting together very gifted musicians that were disabled, and they have been performing at various events since 2012, I believe, which brings us to 2021, when this project came to life. It was originally broadcast online and now finally sees release on physical format. And what is Death Songbook? Well, it's a collection of songs about death, the death of love, of loss, and ultimately of transcendence. That is, to quote the conductor himself, Charles Hazelwood. And he also goes on to say that it reminds us that music is our greatest friend in bleak times, and that is so true. And it invites us to crouch around a candle and meet our sorrow head on, comforting, nourishing, and uplifting. And I find that I can't agree more to what he says, and I do get that feeling when I listen to songs that most people just classify them and label them as sad songs. Maybe this is not a record for everyone, but I'll tell you exactly what it's about. Apart from two originals by Brett Anderson, there are a handful of Suede songs, some of the best songs by Suede, and a plethora of impressive cover versions. And now let's go over some of the songs, cover songs as well, that are featured on Death Songbook. All of these songs are arranged beautifully by Charlotte Harding, and let's take a look we have Echo and the Bunnymen's The Killing Moon. Unsung is one of the originals. The Flaming Lips Holes, on which Nadine Shah is actually featured. Incredible artist and vocalist. Japan's Night Porter. Then we have a Suede song, actually from their last album, She Still Leads Me On. Wonderful Life by Black. Two other Suede songs, The Next Life, which fits perfectly as an orchestra song, and He's Dead. Then we have Gweno on a cover of Depeche Mode's Enjoy the Silence. Nadine Shah also featured on Skeeter Davis's The End of the World. Then, of course, we have My Death by Jacques Brel, and the closer of the album is another original, Brutal Lover. Para Orchestra, Death Songbook. And now the seventh and final album I would like to talk to you about in this second batch of 2024 new releases. If you missed the first one, there's a video on my channel, so feel free to check that out for another batch of 10 new releases from 2024. The last one, Richard Hawley. This is his 10th album. He's been making music for 20 years, I want to say. His most successful album, actually the one that brought him to my attention, was Cole's Corner. This is his 10th album. For those of you who are not familiar with his type of music, 50s and 60s style balladry, very reminiscent of Chris Isaak's sound. He sounds a little bit like Chris Isaak, a little bit like Elvis at times. Beautiful voice, beautifully recorded voice, actually. Also, the entire record is beautifully recorded. But you get the impression. Richard Hawley also is nicknamed the Bruce Springsteen of Sheffield, not because of the sound, because it doesn't sound like Bruce Springsteen. It's just because of the themes that he usually sings about. It's very blue collar, working class, but in kind of like relating to Sheffield and that area of England. Country balladry, cinematic strings, very lush textures. He's also referred to as a British Frank Sinatra or English Frank Sinatra. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but that's the style of music, the type of music that we get from Richard Hawley. Now, there are several versions out there. I have the gatefold version. Some are non-gatefold and various colors. I happen to have the turquoise colored version. And yeah, and that's it for Richard Hawley. Oh, the name of the album, In the City They Call You Love. So I guess that wraps it up for this video as well. Thank you so much for watching so far. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. And thank you so much for subscribing. And by the way, if you like what you saw, if you like other content on my channel, feel free to subscribe. I say it all the time. It doesn't cost you anything, but it brings us to a wider audience and it helps me grow the channel and bring you more videos and talk about more records and maybe some other content as well. So thank you again for watching, and I guess that wraps it up for today, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.